Today we'll be shooting a raven-inspired image here in my studio in southwest Cornwall. This image is a composite of 4, the background, robin, the raven and the butterflies, and shot in that order. The background was shot first for a number of reasons. Shooting the scene first also provides essential information about lighting that we can bring into the studio and then apply those specific lighting characteristics to our subject. Be mindful of clues to wind, such as ripples on water or grass and twigs being blown. We must mimic those conditions in the studio and certainly not conflict with them. My role now is to get this light to behave as similar and as close as possible to how the daylight behaved in the forest. If I were to take a meter reading from Robin's face, measure the amount of light that's falling onto her face, and let's just say we established, for argument's sake, a meter reading of f8, and we can set f8 onto our camera. If I was to take this light meter down to the floor, because her feet are going to be included in the image, and take another light meter reading of the light that's falling down there, that would also be f8. Flash behaves really quite differently. It adheres very strictly to a law of physics called the inverse law. But basically, just for simplicity, if we're in the studio and I was to take a light meter reading, and I can adjust the power of my light up and down, and I was to establish an aperture of f8. And then if I were to travel down to her feet and take another meter reading, because the distance has increased, the light will fall off quite considerably. So by focusing the light down on her feet, what I would ultimately like to achieve is now by metering, what I'm striving for is a balancing. I need what is called a 1-to-1. So what I'm looking for is an f8 up here. And if I drop all the way down to the floor, I've increased the distance. So the light has actually diminished in intensity, but its angle is at its optimum in terms of producing the energy and the most amount of light at this position. So then I would want this to be f8. I want a consistent f8 reading through the whole length of her body. But something for you to consider, that there's 2 angles that we can manipulate here. We could have our light actually, just for argument's sake, we can have it at 30, 45 degrees. And then we've got the frontal plane of the face, that angle being vertical. So when we talk about 45 degrees of light, we're talking about that light coming down onto the face, applying itself to this plane at 45 degrees. But what if I wanted to lower that light down 10 degrees to 35 relative, and then just tilt the face forward 10 degrees, I've come back to a relative angle of light on her face at 45. So let's see how this works. As you'll see, the shoot itself was fairly simplistic. I mean, we're just working with a screen, a couple of reflectors. We're working with one light. There's nothing especially complex about the studio setup. But as you will realize, there was a lot of consideration given to a number of elements that all had to come together, and that comes down to planning and attention to detail. Okay, it's time to begin the edit. Start by adding a brightly coloured layer underneath the model to tell their hair apart. Apply the background eraser to soft hair and avoid the hair with lots of detail. Select the model layer and apply the outline as a layer mask. Using the brush tool, carefully paint areas of detail back in. To outline the rest of the body, use the quick selection tool and paint in the layer mask. Okay, now to add the model to the background. So to make the model's positioning look more natural, we're going to add some grass around her feet and then blend this into the scene. Having finished with the grass, we're now going to add a very soft shadow relative to the angle of the sun and relative to the light ratio that the sun would be creating. Next, we're going to add some layers of mist, which will heighten the overall ambience of the image. I hope you found this video useful, and I very much look forward to presenting some more for you in the very near future. Thank you.